Okay. Hey, so for those of you that are here, thank you for being here. And we want to have just a little bit of a discussion with you, and then we're going to open the panel if you have some questions. Let me start by saying you'll notice we have kind of a broad array of panelists here, and that's because this is a subject that is touching many aspects of our lives. And I think it's an important topic, and maybe tonight will be the one that just whets the appetite for more discussion about this. So the title of our little talk here is Healthy Screening, Media Strategies for Parents. But I think even beyond parents, all of us will find this beneficial. So, and I just wanted to say briefly that the technology does improve our lives in many ways. Okay, so please, we're not taking the hard stance opinion here that we want to ban anything that has a screen. But there are a couple things that we should be aware of. And I want to tell you just a few things to be aware of, and then Pastor Pete is going to give us some strategies, and then we're going to have a discussion here where you can ask questions, or we'll ask some questions of our panelists as well. Here's a couple facts that we need to know. And some of these I quoted the other night, but I want to just go through this quickly. 8th graders, think about this, 8th graders who are heavy users of social media increase their risk of depression by 27%, according to one recent study. Those who play sports, go to church services, do homework, they cut that chance of being depressed tremendously. It's reduced tremendously. We are in a world where we're told that our measure of meaningful relationships is measured by the number of friends we have in our social media accounts. Can you see the problem with that? Like, thousands of friends means that you have success in life, and yet the intimacy of those relationships is almost non-existent. You have numbers, but you don't have people that you have relationships with. We're not designed to have meaningful relationships with thousands of people that we don't have conversations with. Doesn't really work. One of the biggest deceptions of this digital age is the lie that we can be omniscient, we can be omnicompetent, if we could say that, or we could be omni-informed. You got to know, you got to read, you got to have the impulse. As the principal of the Christian school, one thing that I run into a lot of times is students who are literally addicted to the buzz of the notification of their phone. And studies are showing us that dopamine, which is the hormone that's released when your phone is in your pocket and it buzzes, and it works right, that hormone works with the pleasure center. It's the same type of hormonal release that happens when there are things like gambling, when there are things like drugs involved. Even sexual issues have a measure of dopamine, which is addictive. And if it's not in the right perspective, if we don't have the tools used in the right manner, then we can be in big trouble. We gave the illustration the other night of a fork. A fork is a very useful tool, isn't it? It's obviously a very useful tool to me. The fork, right? But you put that fork in the hand of a baby, and it's not so useful anymore, is it? It's dangerous, right? So there's an amazing thing when we have a tool that's useful, used in a useful manner. But there's also an amazing danger to having a useful tool in your hand without the proper ability to use it properly, the training to use it properly, and even the maturity to use it properly. A couple other quick facts. In 2017, there was a study of over 500,000 8th through 12th graders. And again, I'm speaking kind of in the school world right now. 500,000 8th through 12th graders. And they found that the number exhibiting high levels of depressive symptoms increased by 33% between the years 2010 and 2015. Think about that for a minute. Those 5 years, the level of depression among students 8th through 12th increased by 33%. In that same period, and this is really heavy thought, the suicide rate for girls in that age group increased by 65%. Now, we're not talking about necessarily the causation of this, but we're talking about the correlation of this to the screen time issue. Because smartphones were introduced in 2007. And by 2015, of those 500,000 people that were studied, 92% of those teens and young adults owned a smartphone. So the same group that had incredible increase in the amount of depression and suicide, it correlates that they had smartphones in their hands. And this is a quote from one of the psychologists who was involved in this study, said, the less you are connected with human beings in a deep, emphatic way, the less you're really going to get the benefits of that social interaction. So we have all these connections and we have no depth. And we have all these opportunities to put things out there in a manner that we hope pleases people, right? You talk about behavior that is dangerous. We post something on a social media hoping that we get likes. And if we get likes, we feed off the endorphins of getting those likes. And if we don't, depression comes in and we can't understand why, and we're competing. The entire process is competing. But there's no satisfaction that comes along with it. A couple more thoughts. Young children, very young children. Children who again, these studies are available. I can give you sources. If you want to email me, bquirk@ggca.org, I'm happy to share this with you later. I don't want to get into all the details of it right now because I want to use our time to talk about the topic, but you can feel free to ask me for those things. Early results from a large study suggest that screen time may impact children's brains and learning. Children who reported more than 2 hours a day of screen time got lower scores on thinking and language tests. We think of this technology sometimes being a useful educational tool, and it is. We use it in our schools. We have a Dreambox math program. It's an awesome thing. It's used in the right way. It stimulates mathematical thinking. It's intuitive. It actually strengthens you in areas where you don't have the correct answers. It's an amazing thing. But that same iPad that has that Dreambox on it also has the possibility, if we don't put security on it like we do, for them to go down a rabbit hole that completely dulls their brains from everything that they're learning. And not only that, causes them to fall into an atmosphere that by nature brings about dissatisfaction and depression. Finally, studies are showing us that young children are viewing screens somewhere between 2 to 3 hours a day. If you don't believe this, check your iPhone screen time setting. You'll be shocked at how much screen time we spend without even intending to. Keep in mind, and by the way, recently at GGCA, we put a no phone policy in place where we don't even allow students to carry their phones because the dopamine is always buzzing in their pockets. And it's incredible that somebody who has a message in their pocket is unable to focus on the task at hand because they're so concerned with what the message that's being sent through their phone says. And we've taken phones from students and had them on our desk and watched the notifications pile up throughout the day. Incredible amounts of notifications. So-and-so is trying to contact you. Such and such application wants your attention. This thing is happening. That thing is happening. And just one thing after another, it's no wonder why a student can't focus. The motor skills that students need to develop are being dulled by their fascination with the screens. Our teachers will tell you in kindergarten and in first grade that over these last several years, the students have changed. Their attention span has changed. It's a serious thing. So what do we want to do? Well, what we want to do with these things is we want to realize that our identity does not have to come from the popularity contest that is social media. But our identity can come through who we are in Jesus Christ. And this tool could be a portal to our lives that could draw people in a positive way and show them that we have absolutely no cares in this world because of who we are in Jesus Christ. So, with that said, Pastor Pete, come up and pick up the ball from here. Sorry.
Scary stuff. Every time I read the statistics, they're scary to me. And there's like many more that I even read yesterday morning. I think we want to take it very seriously. I don't know how many years ago, 6, 7 years ago, I kind of studied this and went to a Regenerate seminar and also read some stuff from Josh McDowell. I took notes from that, and I pretty much did it just because of my own household, but also because parents kept asking me questions about it, so I decided I should get involved and know what's happening out there. And, I just learned a lot. So I just wrote some notes and five practical points, 5 things that you can do or that you can look into in your household to really combat this, because the main thing here is that you cannot be passive about this. If you're passive about this, then the screen will control your kid, and you'll lose your kid. There's no doubt in my mind that a parent has to be very proactive and very involved. So just point number 1 is really about the relationship. That the best way to fight this problem, whether it's pornography or the anxiety that a lot of girls get from social media, or just the amount of time or the lack of sleep. It's amazing how many kids are up till 2 in the morning on their phones. I bet you we could get, if we got teachers up on the stage, they would all concur that they hear kids say all the time, I was up till 2 in the morning on a weeknight, And then, well, how does that affect your life, and how does that affect your studies and all this kind of stuff? But the way that the number one way that we fight this is with relationship, and that makes sense to me because that's how God dealt with me. God did not deal with me with rules. God did not throw the law at me. God touched me and became personal to me and loved me, and within that context gave me instruction, And as a parent, we have to be extremely serious about dialogue and communication and talking with our kids. You cannot do this with a set of rules. You have to do this by sitting down with them and communicating and attacking it, I read fascinating articles about the link of or the problem of pornography and the missing father figures in family, There's definitely a link with the need to be on social media or on screens or addicted to these things that are on our phones, and a lack of connection, And we're not here to beat anybody up, but we just want to point to the fact that as a parent, the number one thing that I have to do is build a relationship with my kid, and that relationship needs to be open, and we need to talk about this. We need to continuously, have conversations with our kids, and that passivity in this area is just not an option. I don't want to have conversations with a guilt trip or give a guilt trip to my child. I don't want to be freaking out or have angry conversations. We just want to have calm conversations. And these conversations need to happen before 10 years old. Before 10 years old, This is about controlling your household, This is about, like, God loves me in my relationship, but in that relationship, he becomes governmental, The more that I learn how much God loves me, the more I learn about how close he is to me and how much he cares about me. With that came a governmental controlling factor. God starts controlling my life the more I got to know him. And it's the same thing in my household. I love my family, I love my kids, and the more I love him, the more I implement control mechanisms in my house. And one of the things that I notice is that, we don't have control of our kids' phones. They, the last thing any parent wants to do is take their kid's phone away or put, limitations on it. And, with a proper relationship, you get that control. You say, son, here's what we're going to do. I love you. I care too much about you. Here's what I got to do. I'm going to take your phone away, or we're going to put limitations on this phone. But the rules come after the relationship, And the earlier you do that, the earlier you gain control. I always thought that I gained control before they turned 10, and then I lived the benefit of that when they were teenagers, The rules were set in place when they were young, and then as they became teenagers, it was just automatic. No, we don't do that. Here's how we do this, and it was very simple. I said to myself I wasn't going to talk about my household. It's really hard not to because of the experience you have. So we want to communicate. We want to have a relationship. We want to talk about this. This is not to be ignored. This is not to just go away. Number two, we want to call it out what it is. We want to have that sit down relationship, and we want to say, here's what I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about pornography. And as dads, maybe we don't want to talk about that stuff, or maybe we don't want to talk about these subjects that we don't know a lot about. But I really believe the devil has to be exposed. Our flesh has to be exposed. And in our communication, we really get specific about what social media does to us and all these statistics. And we have these kind of conversations about how social media is not a source for happiness for me. It's not a source for friendship or even for social connections. It is not a place where I can solve my problems. These are the conversations that I want to have with my child, and I want to be open and very transparent about the fact that this is a really bad and dangerous thing, And, whether you use facts or, however you do it, but it has to be called out, and you have to call it what it is. And do not excuse it. Don't excuse, don't excuse, if your son is attracted to women, don't excuse pornography. Don't excuse anything you see on a screen. Call it out and be confrontational about it, because he has to know that there's a standard and that there's a bar that we live to, as Christians. I also hate it when we blame or find reasons for it, Everyone's a victim and everybody has reasons for why they do what they do, but the real reason is an evil heart, And we just talk about that. You just say, here's the problem. We have an evil heart. If we go down this road, you're going to be in trouble. And the reason why you're going to be in trouble is because it's not from God. And there's some real bad things that can happen. And here's the bad things that are going to happen in your life if you do this or if you do that. So calling it out and being very confrontational with your child about it is very important. When I discuss it with my child, I don't demonize the internet or your iPhone or your TV or your PlayStation, That's also very dangerous, Because your child will grow up and turn on the TV one day and say, wait a minute, this was just a great little show I just watched, or use his phone down the road innocently and say, there's nothing wrong with this. So it's very important to not make it an evil thing. The issue is not that the phone is evil. The issue is that my heart is evil. And, we have to have mechanisms in place where we don't go overboard with these things. So I want to say that, social media is not evil, but it can be evil. And it's better that I teach my son how to govern and how to control his life and how to, be safe internet users, be safe TV users, be safe PlayStation users, than it is to say it's all evil, and just really have a balance there. The goal is success, like online success and TV success and PlayStation success. After lots of discussions, after lots of communication, after, confronting it and exposing it in love, then I can implement some rules, because if I start with the rules, then I'm gonna get rebellion, But if I have rules without relationships, right? It doesn't work. You have to have a relationship, then you can implement the rules. So once I have the discussions and once I have the love and the relationship in place, then it's very easy to bring in some rules, because your child knows your heart. You love him, and there has to be rules. They need your help. That's what I would like to say more than anything else here today. Your child needs your help. They cannot do this alone. You talk about it, you love them, and then you help them with the rules. They come after the fact, And I just think that a laptop or a phone does not belong in a bedroom, especially at night. Just absolutely no screens or phones or anything in the bedroom. They go where my phone goes, which is on the kitchen counter, and our laptop is in the living room, and that's the only place for a screen. That's where the TV is too. And these are not the things that are gonna get it done, but they help. They just really help. And we had passwords on our TV, and we had passwords on our laptops, and I just wanted to help. I just said, I've had the conversations, I've had the talks, I have a great relationship, but I'm going to also have some rules and limitations and margins. We just love that word. So we limit social media. We have times and events where the cell phone is not allowed, like camp. It's a great time to send your kid to camp without a cell phone, and different events. And we just really stay on top of it. We just stay on top of it. A long time ago, they would talk about the big conversation. The big talk. Dad has a big talk with the son about the birds and the bees or whatever. That is not the proper way. The proper way is that we have many, many little talks. I often think, especially with teenagers, I gotta tap the brakes. Just a little conversation here and a little conversation there, and a couple months later, another conversation, and then because it's a relationship, and we keep talking about it. We don't have one big talk and then think we're good for a couple of years. We just continue to talk to them, and continue to communicate with them about the problems and the issues and what we do. No, we don't do that here, and continue to help them, We just want to really be very much involved in their lives all the time. And the phone is my phone. It's my phone, and I can grab it anytime I want, and I can look at it anytime I want. And the password isn't a password that I know. And as long as the rules are honored, then you can use it. But it's my phone, and I want control of that phone. And they know the reason why, because I love you and I care about you, and I win that battle. And I stay very involved with what's happening on that area, you know. And there are so many apps and so many tricks to this stuff that it's difficult to keep up with as a parent. But there's incognito mode, you know, on your laptops where nobody can see where you went. And there's apps on your phone that you can use to, you know, communicate with other teenagers without parents knowing what's happening. You know, the history is deleted immediately, and there's all kinds of things like that. So, again, the rules are not going to get you there. The relationship is what's going to get you there, and the communications is what is going to help that child more than anything. The love and the open and transparency is what really has to happen between a parent and a father and a son, especially, or a father and a daughter. You know, that is the key, and I can't stress that enough. And the rules are just after that's established, really. And that's how God did it with me, so that makes sense to me. I think that's it. We'll open it up. Yeah.
Okay, so this is a panel, and that's the under 50 side. Oh, that's right, Pete's not under 50 yet. Okay, so if you have a question, this is time for questions, not speeches. So if you have a question that you'd like to ask anyone up here about that, I'm representing grandfathers, I think, when I look across this panel. Ryan's representing, I'm not sure who you're representing. Sam is representing a teen who's surviving in the world of, in the world of screens and whatnot. You can do it with the microphone, yeah, because we're recording this. I think it's going out over the internet, so.
It was very good. Okay, it was very good. Thank you. Thank you. Just to ask Sam, like, if I had a 10-year-old little girl in my home, and maybe you know, she's on the phone and she's learning how to use it, and you don't know what would you advise? How would I, as a parent, because you seem like to be experienced parental material.
Obviously.
No, go ahead. Now, what do you think about it? What's being said, and also what would I do in that?
I mean, as someone just interested in investing in young women, obviously I'm not a parent, but my thought towards that is exactly like Pete said, it really genuinely comes from relationship on any subject matter. And my wheels have just been turning about this since it was brought up to me about what do I think about this for myself personally that I can then advise someone else or speak to a 10-year-old who I actually nannied a 10-year-old or almost 10-year-old girl this summer. And I think the biggest thing is, what is my relationship to this? Just like if I was looking to be healthy, what is my relationship to food? How do I view it? What is its impact in my life? How do I view something that's around me all the time? And a great place to start with that is you can ask a 10-year-old girl, what are your goals? What do you want? What are your desires? And it starts to build that relationship and see where their heart is and see what they are thinking about. And if my goal is to maybe, you know, I want to be successful in school, or I would like to be a veterinarian, or they will give you tons of answers. Or if it's like, I want to know more about God, what are the steps to that? And this starts to play in, because if I'm spending time on my phone, what am I spending my time with my phone doing? What am I doing with my thoughts? Like, what am I thinking about a lot? And you can ask a 10-year-old girl those questions. And it starts to make them think about it, because it really comes down to, what do they think about it? Because I can have a lot of restrictions on how I can use it and why I can use it, but if my thinking towards it is wrong, you know, it just doesn't matter, you know? just like us as adults, like if my thinking towards the way I use my phone, even though I say like I can't use it during this time of the day, isn't right, and it's not right with God, then I can't do it effectively. And just starting to equip them with thinking about their time. When I have my phone, when I'm watching TV, like what am I thinking about? Because it's the passivity that is dangerous for us as adults, for 10-year-olds. Just what am I thinking about? What is the impact of this on my life?
So I was your principal, right? And I recall you being a student that was not preoccupied with any of this stuff. And how did you do that? What was it that kept you from, because I hear this word relationship is being bantered about, and I think if there's a lacking in your life in a relationship, then you're going to turn somewhere for that, right? Yeah. So you were a student in high school in a world that's surrounded by these kinds of things. How did you manage to avoid the pitfalls?
I had the pleasure of being tried pretty early on in my life, which created a desire for deeper things in my life while I was in high school. And that affected, I started asking myself, I remember as a junior in high school, and I had always kind of been strict with myself, like, oh, I'm not the one that uses my phone, and I'm not that person. But I started thinking, like, as I wasn't doing anything wrong with my phone, but I noticed myself just spending any free moment, just kind of looking at it casually, passively. What are my goals? What do I want to accomplish in my time? I have 2 years left in high school. What do I want? I want to grow closer with God. I want to build deep, meaningful friendships. I want to learn. And I started realizing that way I was spending my time with my phone was so passive that it wasn't cost effective. I really wasn't doing what God had asked me to do with my time and stewarding it. So as a young person, having goals that I want to accomplish, but also just knowing what I want from my life and thinking about that consciously affects the way I use things, like my time in school, like my phone, like my relationships with my teachers and my friends.
Okay, I'm going to give you a list. This is my list. So, toys that don't do anything, but lay there until a kid picks them up. That's good. Balls are awesome. All kinds, footballs, tennis balls, basketballs, keys, horns, drums, all of those kind of things for parental strategies. You know, those are the kinds of things that we steered my kid into. Woods, playing in the woods, being outside, that kind of thing. You know, shutting off the TV, really. I mean, we get asked, my wife and I get asked questions because, like, how did your children get to where they are? Because our children are all 30 now. And we treat grandchildren a lot differently than we treat children. You know, they get spoiled a lot differently. They get spoiled. Our kids did not get spoiled. But, you know, just simple, you know, I know what Pastor Pete was saying about relationship and rules. I'm sorry, I had one big talk, and I went from age 33 to 43. When you're telling your 8-year-old son where he came from and how he got here, you swallow hard and you eat French fries at McDonald's. That's how we did it. But you know, really the one rule we had was like Sunday night, went home from church, and we sat around the kitchen table, and it became family bonding time. And the kids started to insist upon it. Like if I came and tried to sneak off to like see what the score of the ball game was, Dad, it's family bonding time. But the television went off in our house at that point until the next Friday night when we watched TGIF, which was all those family shows that my kids enjoyed, and they actually taught some values. So like I'm not anti-TV or anything like that, but I would just say, you know, I learned this from a child psychiatrist who wasn't a Christian but became a Christian from talking to Lee Strobel. He told us, you know, that if you're if you give kids toys that do things for them, they never learn how to relate to an object in the right way. And what is, a screen does everything for you. And the image changes in milliseconds. Like, I don't know if you know that, but every image changes in milliseconds. And that's part of the way the kid is like sort of hypnotized into what he's got. But those are just like the strategies that we had as parents, and shutting that down and having them have. So there's a lot of activities. So my kids would sing, they would play their instruments, they would listen to Motown music. Sorry, but we loved it, and we could sing along with it. So that was kind of cool. I'm sure they listened to other kind of music, but that's really like how our kids became who they are. And you'd have to ask Jean Marie more, because she was, they feared her. They didn't, we thought Mom would kill us. You were a softie. But, so that's, the screen kind of thing was like, you just sort of established it, and you just had to follow through with it. So, yep.
So the one thing that I love about the family bonding time, and actually a lot of experts tell us, take a basket out and put it on your kitchen table, and when it's dinner time, everybody's phone goes in the basket, so there's actually fellowship. That's assuming there's still a dinner time with your family, because actually the age we live in, that's all broken down, right? Like, people are coming and going, and you don't have that personal time. So when you have it, capitalizing on it. And the other one is that even what they said, as far as to say when Dad comes home from work, that the phone goes away and we have discussion like, how was your day? And that's a lost art also, but it's a healthy art, isn't it? Like, that you don't have to be preoccupied with something else, but you actually have the nuclear unit that's your family. Because those are the secure kids, or the kids that have the families. And you know what? Sometimes Mom and Dad are strict, but Mom and Dad being strict gives them a safety zone and a relationship that they don't have to go outside and look for something else, right? That's where a lot of these problems are coming from, is that we're putting tools in people's hands where you can go outside and look for something else, and it's substitutionary. In some cases, it's the electronic babysitter that watch this screen so I don't have to do anything. And in the process, we're driving them further and further outside of the doors. And at some point in life, we'll have, I got a, right when I gave that testimony the other night during church, I got a text message on stage, which I thought was ironic. And speaking about screens, and I get a text on stage. I won't reveal who it was, but his initials are BHK Jolte. But he brought up a couple good points that at some point it would be great to hear about just the general world of security and cybersecurity and things like that, and how incredibly simple it is to captivate your phone and to turn it into a weapon in your house, really. And it's all out there. I don't want to get into this long discussion about that, but this is vital stuff. But what heals all of that is the relationship. And I wanted to just take a second and ask if I could ask Ryan a question. He is a guy who's technically savvy. He manages some of our accounts for the school. He communicates to his workers through social media posts and things like that. And yet, again, somebody who has a healthy understanding of that whole world. So tell us something about that. I know that's a wide open question, but how are you able to use it as a tool without being sucked into something that it's not?
All right, so I use my phone for work purposes a lot when I'm at work. I don't use my phone really so much for non-work related things when I'm at work. Having that technology actually makes my job a lot easier. I could do my job without it, but it would take me longer. It would be a little bit more difficult. Some of the stuff I have to do requires apps, like ordering stuff for work, for the cafe and stuff. And then also, a couple years ago, I was scheduling everything on the computer. My worker's schedule was on the computer, and then it was through a link, through our church, through something else, and I was like, this is so complicated. So then I found an app. So we had an app and made everything easier. It made them responsible. Sam can attest. I could schedule from anywhere at any time. They could ask each other for coverage and all that kind of stuff. And then I could post tasks to them while they're in school. And because I also work at the school, so most of my employees are also students. So the line can get a little blurry. So sometimes I'm scheduling shifts for people, and I can see the students while they're supposed to be in a class looking at the stuff I posted. So there were times when I would have to say, like, guys, I can see that you're on your phones, and I'm the one that's going to come take your phone from you, so you should just turn your phone off, whatever. And then at the same time, we started an Instagram account for the cafe and an Instagram account recently for the school. And I think the Instagram account for the cafe has been great, but you do fall into the, like, how many people have looked at what we posted today? Or you start thinking in terms of, like, Instagram posts. I'll be walking around, I got to take a picture of that. This will be great Instagram. People are like, what is he talking about? And so even though I can control it, I have to make a decision to not let it control me. And so for, I don't know how, so I think it's been helpful and it is very useful. I do think that we need to set boundaries. Like I said, I don't use my phone for the most part. I can't say I never look up something else that's not work related when I'm working, but 99% of the time I'm using my phone for work when I'm at work, and I tell my staff that too. There's so much to do. Like, I can walk in at any time, and if you're on your phone, I'm just assuming there's nothing left to do. You should go home. And I'm like, that's never the case. But at the same time, I say one of you should keep your phone nearby because maybe I want to contact you. So it is like, it puts responsibility on my staff too to even when I'm not there, I can't be on my phone unless it's work related because there are things I require them to do on their phone. So it's training them how to use it, and I think I have to be the example. If they see me on my phone all the time at work, I don't know, buying shoes or doing some weird, whatever, they're going to be like, he tells us, he can't, he's using his phone. But I don't know, do I use my phone? No. All right. So I can say for ourselves at home, we set the same kind of boundaries that Pastor Pete was talking about. We don't use our phones in the bedroom. I mean, we bring them in the bedroom, but we don't use technology in the bedroom, and we don't use it at dinner. And a while ago, I turned my phone on silent because I was getting messages and calls, and I would run out of the room and go look. And then I realized once I turned it on silent, things were a lot easier. I mean, I have a watch, but I take my watch off at home, my Apple Watch, so I don't get the notifications there. And I'm not saying I don't use my phone at home. My wife will be like, yes, you do use your phone all the time at home. So that also is, because I don't use it at work for non-work related things, I tend to use it more at home for just nothing. We're just looking around, whatever, searching on the internet for nothing, really. And then, so also for work, I started a Pinterest account. So I did it for recipes to make things at work. I don't do it for anything else, really. But when I first started it, I would log in and there'd be pictures of half-naked women and shirtless men. So I was trying to figure out what was happening, and then someone told me you have to set filters. So I had done nothing but signed up for a Pinterest account, and that's the default, was to show that kind of stuff. And then, so you should set filters. And then also, we don't let our son, who's only 18 months or whatever, we don't let him use our phones, and we don't let him use the iPad. And we did this weekend put a toddler thing on the iPad because we were cutting his hair, and we wanted to distract him. And while the toddler show was airing, the pop-up came up, and it was some scary Halloween zombie. So we like quickly turned it off. So even when you're searching for toddler things, these other things can come up. So the innocence behind your decision does not mean that what's coming on the screen is going to be innocent. And so you just have to be careful, because you're not even looking for things, they're looking for you. And so I agree with what has been said up here, and anything that I would have said, they've kind of said. But do set boundaries for your kids and be the example by having those same boundaries for you. And obviously, certain things you're going to be able to do that they can't do because you have already developed that self-control and whatever. But you just never know. It's kind of just like, if there are no boundaries, you're just opening. It's like leaving your doors and your windows wide open in the middle of the night and letting anybody come in, because you're asleep in bed and your kids are asleep in bed. And, you know, that's why we have locks and we have windows and we have doors, and it keeps that safety. And I think having worked with kids and having relationship with teens and youth, you find that phone becomes their safety. And again, we don't think that the phones are bad. We just know that there are capabilities for them to take over control. And like Pastor Barry said, there have been times when we've taken phones and it's just on your desk blowing up with like Snapchat, Instagram. It's even like while the kids are in school, they're Snapchatting each other. So you're just like, this is ridiculous. And I did post something on Instagram for work once, and one of the students who was in school, in class, liked it, and the notification came on my phone, so I just took a screenshot and reposted it, like, when you should be in school. So I called him out on it. But I have a relationship with that kid, so that kid thought it was funny, and it was, you know, it was funny. It wasn't anything bad, but Yep, he was expelled. He didn't graduate. No, so yeah, the safeguard your children, and ultimately it really is your phone, even though it's their phone. So you really have the rights to check it whenever you want, and yeah.
Question here.
So this will be really quick. 3 quick things. So, short story, we have kids under 7, and in the morning we found them sneak into our room, get one of our smartphones, and then start watching YouTube. And these are under 7, so they're getting pretty smart. Second thing is, so this is to piggyback after Pastor Barry, is would you recommend not getting a smartphone until, say, our kids are like maybe 16? Like, this piggybacks off of the maturity. Is that something you might recommend? And then piggybacking off of Pastor Steve is, so we struggle with, you talk about the basketball. Our son Micah really likes to play basketball, but then we got video games and especially virtual reality, which are like really immersive. And I feel like the dopamine level of some of those video games are just like through the roof. So how do we compare that, sports versus like the video games? So we're trying to balance that, and I don't know what your thoughts are on those things.
Yeah, my kids whined for a while. It's like that whining sort of quiets down. One summer we told them the TV was broken. We lied. And one day they opened it. Hey, TV's been here all summer. They whined. Like, it's summer. No, you're not going. The TV's broken. So I'm sorry, we lied, but that did happen. I don't know. I mean, you know your children. You have to get to know your children. Every child is different, and we raised each of our children differently, and they had their own interests and things like that. And we were in particular, like there were things that, that we made sure that they knew that this was for you, and this was for you, and we celebrated each of them. If Paul was playing a basketball game, we all went and watched. If Tim had a recital when he was playing clarinet and couldn't play like he plays now, we all went and sat through, 16 other kids who were struggling with clarinet. Those kind of things really help, those kind of things, yeah, that kind of thing. Sarah had her singing recital. We all went, and, so that kind of family thing. You have what, 4? 4 kids, right? 4 under 5, is that right? Huh? 4 under 6 or 4 under 7. God bless you. Oh my God! Pray for them right now. Pray for John. It's amazing. It's amazing. But I mean, I think like the kids have a capacity. They say they're bored, but at some point they start learning how to use their time. You know, and whether it's picking up a book or something like that, every child will be different. But yeah, I know what you're saying about smartphones, but like I didn't have a smartphone and now I do, and they told me that, you know, there's never going to be another dumb phone ever. So except for whatever they call those track phones at Walmart, that's the only dumb phone you can buy now, or something like that. So I don't know how you're going to address that. Like, you know, I don't, you know.
Let me say something about that, because the thing about a phone is that it's a tool, right? And you know, the tool, again, has to be used in a way that's healthy, or it's counterproductive. And the age, like for ages 2 to 7, you know, so like half hour of screen time a day is a lot. An hour of screen time is a lot. 2 hours of screen time is counterproductive to their development as a human being, right? And actually there's been studies where they've studied the linings of the brain and seen the long-term damage that occurs as a result of, you know, intense screen time and stimulation that's not designed to be there. So what's the last thing that people do with their smartphones these days? Make phone calls. Nobody actually even uses their phone to call anymore, right? You want to get a hold of somebody, what do? You text. You know, it takes all the courage of making a phone call. It's incredible. I said to one of my children, very good, Pastor Steve. I'm changing the story to protect the innocent. But when she was in high school, it's like, why don't you just call the person? It's like, oh, no, I don't call. Like, no, we communicate, you know, we text. And to me, it's, you know, that's something like, do I really want my 2 to 7-year-old not learning how to communicate, right? It's like, you know, if they need something, if they're in pain or if they're suffering, what do? They cry out or they communicate, and navigation is a word that we use a lot in GGCA. We use this word navigation a lot. And we are, as youth workers and youth pastors and principals and students, and you know, we're always trying to help students learn how to navigate through their lives. And I think the tools we put in their hands can either help that or hurt that. And do I think it's a bad thing that you know, a 13 or 14-year-old doesn't have a smartphone yet? No, not at all. I think when they have the responsibility to use it. Now, are there 13s and 14s that use their smartphone responsibly? Probably. You know, so, but it's hard. And why would I want to put my child in a place where life is going to be more difficult, you know? So I would think long and hard about that and really be led by God, what you're going to put in their hands. And it is true, it's unfortunate that the old style of flip phone or something that was actually used for making phone calls doesn't exist. But if we wait around long enough, they'll come back like Polaroid cameras. So
I was thinking I would wait as long as possible until it becomes, you know, that you're demonizing it, you know. Like there's a point where you lose credibility with your kids because you're over the top and you just lose them. And it depends on the kids, the age. You know, some kids, you know, faster than others. But so I would say, you know, you fight the battle as long as possible, and then at some point you just feel like, you know, I'm gonna get them a phone because, you know, they're the only person amongst 1,000 teenagers that doesn't have a phone, and they hate my guts for it. You know what I mean? You start losing that battle a different way. So and you can't say what age. It depends on the kid. My daughter was totally different than my son. I just gave my son his first phone last week. It's great. No. And the problem is also they get your hand-me-downs, right? So they don't want to go buy a new phone, so they get the hand-me-downs. So it ends up being a smartphone. But
I would say, sorry, in response to the video games, I was not a heavy video gamer, but I did play some video games. But I liked the destructive video games where, you know, I wasn't playing the sports ones. I was playing the shoot 'em and steal the cars, and and even when I was older, played randomly, like whatever. If someone was playing it, we'd play it. But it does change the way you think. So I was driving down the road and I was thinking of everybody in terms of points and what car can I hit? But I'm an adult, so I knew like, okay, that's not right. That's just and I was barely playing them, so prolonged exposure to it definitely will change. Maybe it's not as bad if they're just playing sports video games, but that's another thing that we find in the school, like, the first thing I usually ask a kid when they come into the office, if they're in trouble, like, what time did you go to bed last night? Oh, it's like 10, 9, whatever. If it's like a reasonable hour, I'm like moving on to another question. But why were you up? Oh, I was playing video games, or oh, I was watching some TV. So I would also recommend like limiting the use of video games to your children. And I mean, when I reached a certain age when I was growing up, I had a TV in my room, but I will never let my son have a TV in his room. Just because it's like unnecessary, really. We don't have one in our room, so why does he need one? I didn't need one. I was in the basement, and whatever. Why did I need it's just pointless, really. I didn't play video games, I just watched stupid TV shows and wasted hours when I should have been a better student, and that kind of stuff. So it does change the way you think. So kids are very, I don't know the word, moldable. So you want to mold them the right way. So you really have to be careful with what they are doing. And if they are playing video games, just talk to them occasionally, like, because like Sam said, what are they thinking about?
Just play it with them.
Yeah, play it with them, yeah.
It's funny because
Aren't you a designer?
yes, I come from the game world, so I like playing games, so it's hard to balance that.
Yeah.
And funny thing, yeah, and funny thing is, we stayed at an Airbnb, and it had a TV in every room, every bedroom. And so the first thing my kids asked is when we got home is, can we get a TV in our room? So it's interesting you mentioned that because it's become, people are used to that now. So it's kind of scary, but.
The thing that I'm like thinking of, like, for you guys, is like 5 years down the road, there's going to be something different. Like the smartphone now, all of a sudden, the new iPhone is at 12. I think I got a 4. But the iPhone has like triple cameras or something like that. I'm watching football and I'm watching, is that the new iPhone? Yeah, it's a new iPhone. It's got 3 different cameras on it. I'm going, really? Wow. So I mean, the parents today are like like when I was when I was a kid, when I was we had Leave It to Beaver and Gilligan's Island and Little Rascals, and then got kicked out of the house to go play baseball. 3 channels, maybe 4 if we were lucky. If my brother would stand on the TV and stick his finger out but you guys are like, in the palms of your kids' hands, when you've got 4 teenagers, oh man, we should anoint you with oil right now. When you have 4 teenagers, that's going to be like kind of an interesting dynamic. And I think that, most of the people in this room are through their parenting or near the end of their parenting strategies. And, we need to pray for this, the people who have young children, because the technology is not going to stop. It's not going to stop. It's just going to keep accelerating and everything like that. I now have I get a dopamine thing every time I get 10,000 steps because I got a Fitbit now. But this Fitbit is like, it tells me when I get text messages too. It's like, so, I'm getting shocked with those kind of things. But what's the next level? What's the next level that they're going to put, and I think all of us are like, and I was going to ask, Ryan answered the question I was going to ask him, like, you got a 1.5-year-old, right? And you're already putting into the strategies for how that's going to happen and how is it going, I think, like, how did we survive our parenting dilemmas and everything like that? It's like, it was a lot of prayer. It was the body of Christ. Church was, church was the life. Like, church was not optional. It was you're coming unless you're like, you got a fever 102. if you got a fever of 101, I'm going to sit you in the corner near the bathroom, right over there with your book. And then if you got to go throw up, you'll go into the bathroom. No one will know. You won't spread it around, We didn't even have hand sanitizer then. How did we survive? I don't understand. But I mean, that's, our point is like to pray for all of you and help you go through that period and, give you counsel and be there when you mess up. Because you do, you mess up, you yell, you fight, you do that kind of thing. Your daughter tells you that she hates you and slams the door on you, and then comes down 3 hours later and says, can you take me to the mall because I need a dress for the spring banquet? Oh, okay, sure, but you hate me. No, it doesn't change anything. It's just like those kind of conversations, but like this is, the kind of information, controlling the flow of information is like, it's going to be more and more impossible. It's going to have to be really, I don't like this word because intention is a noun and we're saying like you be intentional, but it's like we have to purpose. That's a better word. We'll say purpose to like make sure that we keep our children in a focus that is not, backlit. So it's going to be, you guys got a different kind of era to live in. So we're with you, and that's hopefully you got good parents. It's amazing. They're spiritual people. They'll help you. They'll pray for you, and just make sure they're on the same thing. Used to be sugar highs. Now we got to make sure that we don't let the kids play with my iPad. That's like no, not playing with my iPad.
Okay, I think one more question.
Question to you, Pastor Barry and Pastor Pete. My kids have a friend who is he seemed to be a really cool guy, and then we start looking through the messages that they had dialogues with, and I realized he's not that cool guy. And I had to have a call with him. He's 18. I said, look, or 17, I'm going to talk to you like a man. So it's a man-to-man conversation. Blah, 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 no more interactions with my kids and so on. And he ended up opening up and then just ever since then he's texting me and he's calling me and so on and so forth. So that kind of like triggered my mind, and he's really, really opening up about his personal struggles in life. Long intro. So how in the last maybe 5, 6, 7 years, you guys being in teen ministry, youth ministry, and then being a principal of the school, how did the conversations change with the kids? What kind of struggles and problems are they coming to you guys with? Like, I'm just trying to think about what could be the things that I am not aware of, or the trends, or what are the things that are going on that maybe surprise you or shock. You understand what I'm trying? Yeah. And then the second question, you said one question, but I'm squeezing in another one, is how do you deal with but everybody else has it, or but everybody else does it, and my kids go to a Christian school, and but the statement, but you guys are so strict. I have 5 classmates that can play Fortnite. How come I cannot play Fortnite?
Yeah, and maybe I'll hit one part of that, and Pastor Pete's going to hit the other part. But the conversations that we have in the school, I had a student who was a fourth grader, I think, a year or two ago, and had an next-door neighbor who was 14 who showed her something online, gave it to her. It was the most abhorrently shocking, incredibly disgusting thing that I would never even suggest to you what it was. But the shock factor, this little fourth grader shared it with another fourth grader who, it started like a virus in the class. And we're talking about fourth graders, So this 14-year-old girl who had nothing to do with Christian school was affecting our classroom incredibly. So I stopped believing that there's no big deal. It's not a big effect. It is. There was a game that was popular a couple years ago, and I can't even remember the name of it now, but the game literally was set up with pit stops in it for, people who were online predators to speak to your children. And it was like the most innocent game. And, there are huge movements in what used to be as a designer and a gamer, someone who grew up in the game world, he can tell you what's there, and probably aware of all the things that could be there, as others I know could tell me the same thing. But we have to be realistic, and I do, and segueing into what Pastor Pete's going to talk about. But I would say, how do you have that conversation? How do everybody else is doing it. We didn't have it to this degree because of the visibility of it, the games, these things. But I grew up asking my dad the same questions. Why am I not able to stay out beyond a certain night? Why do I have to be at church every Wednesday night? How come I don't get to go away on the weekends, but I have to be here? I played travel hockey, and it was like my parents would send me off with somebody. If I absolutely had a game that I had to go to, they wouldn't come. And I would say, how come you're not coming? Well, because we have a commitment. And I learned from a very young age what it means to have a conviction and to have a commitment. And the loss that I thought I was suffering was minute compared to the, down the road. Balancing that with Pastor Pete.
Adding to what you're saying, I think it's much worse than we think. I mean, if I can just be honest with you, I remember being a 16-year-old boy and what we had to go through to get to a Playboy. We lived in Lenox, so you had to go to the liquor store. And, of course, there's 1,000 body members that live downtown Lenox, so you have to get into the liquor store without anyone seeing you. Then you have to sneak to the back, steal one because you never had any money. And you had to have your buddy had to be involved to distract the guy that owned the liquor store, the one-legged guy. Remember him? So it just was like...
I was not his buddy. Just telling that public...
I remember trying this. I remember plotting this, plotting this, and we chickened out, So fast forward 30 years, and I hate to tell you this, but I think it's much, much worse. It's not a phase. If you catch your son one time, it's not a phase. You just got a little, glimpse of. So I think the anxiety is out of control. Kids, girls suffer from depression, anxiety. Guys suffer from pornography. It's much worse than you think. And you can just go online and find out yourself. There's all kinds of parent websites, and the numbers are horrible. And I don't think we're any better in this church. You think we're better, because we're Christian, raising Christian. I don't believe so. And the primary cause is because parents are ignorant and are not aware of it, and they don't attack it. They're passive about dealing with it, So that was the first question. Second question was, every kid tells their parents that they're way too strict. Every kid says that. I'm convinced, 14 years as a youth leader. I don't know how many parents have come to me, my son thinks I'm so strict. I hear it every other month. I don't know if you hear the same thing. I hear it all the time. So don't buy that. Do not buy that. That's a lie. That's a really good, tactic for a kid. And then, there is, you gotta really be careful. There is a way that you can just be so strict and full of rules and laws that you're losing him. So I've said that. I'm repeating myself. So you got to be very careful and be very. There's a great verse, Micah 6:8, right? You have to. What is it? Love mercy. Walk. What is it? Do justly. Sorry. Love mercy. Do justly. Walk humbly. And it's the humble part that'll tell you how to do the law or mercy. Be very humble, and God will show you when you should be strict and tough, and when you should be merciful with your child. The Holy Spirit can help us, but I, in the context of dialogue, I sit down with my son. Let's use another example, just because I don't want to. Let's use alcohol. I want to show my son the statistics on alcohol. Hey, I want to talk to you. I got a meeting. Can we meet? Can we have one of these little powwows? Yes, okay. Let's talk about alcohol. Let's go online. Let's show you all the statistics. 80,000 people a year die from alcohol. Blah blah blah. Endless statistics. 70% of spousal abuse happens from drunk husbands, and blah 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 blah. It goes on and on. The statistics are unbelievable. Okay, son, I'm your dad, and I am responsible for you. I love you. And within this information, I suggest we make a plan, and the plan is this: we're not going to drink in this house. You know what I mean? You understand why I have the plan? Yeah, I get it. That's the best way. Okay, that's the best way. And the earlier you do that, the better. While they're still impressionable, while they still think you're a god in the house, that's the time to do that stuff. When they're 16, it doesn't work so well. They don't want to hear from you. They're tired. They already know. And also, your kids already know how you think. They already know how you think. They should already know exactly what dad thinks by the time they're 16. So your bullets are shot. You're done. So the earlier you do it, the better.
I think one of the worst things I ever heard from my dad was, my convictions on this, so you can go ahead and make that decision with God. That was like, he took away all the defenses, If he just said no, I could be rebellious and do it. Yeah. But when he put it that way, and I had to walk before God doing justly and being humble, that's a tough thing. So, sorry.
Pastor Bear, I have a question. So, kids now, they are so into it, social media, and some of the parents I hear, they say, I have Instagram, I have Facebook, I have Snapchat because I want to know what my kids are doing so I can be involved and see what they're posting. So I myself, I am a computer savvy, but I just never did that. I have never had any social media because I just didn't have the time, and I know how is time consuming. So what is your advice on that?
I think we've touched on it a little bit, but if my minor child has any kind of interaction that involves a password, they're not on there unless I have that password with them. And, that was the case. Like, I could pull your phone at any moment. Like Pastor Pete said, I could look at your phone. Hey, honey, let's open up your account. Show me what you're up to, And I didn't really, we lived in Hungary. At the time, it wasn't such a big deal in my family. But, my wife and I do it, right? Like, we have phones that we share our passwords because just to avoid the appearance of evil. The devil would love to destroy us, right? So we have access to everything. And the last thing I want is access to another phone. I don't even want access to my phone. But to get the answer to that question, I think it's a conviction between you and God how involved you are. And I would never counsel someone to not be involved. I just think, along the lines of what Pastor Pete just said, that the relationship that you develop with your kids is what's going to develop the convictions that they have and where they go and how they act. And you could really push them, I think, in the wrong direction if you are so overbearing that the strength of sin is in the law. But at the same time, if they know that I care about them and that there is danger behind, this isn't let's make a deal, choose door number 1, door number 2. All 3 doors are evil. They really are. And I just say this about social media in general. It can be a great tool. I've lived on a couple different continents for several years. There's like a portal into my life that I'm living here, but also there's a huge responsibility. And as the principal of a school, there's an even bigger responsibility because you don't know how many times I want to just say something that I'm thinking. And I'm like, I can't. It doesn't represent just me, but it represents the school, the ministry. And so we're really careful about that. And I think, there's just a huge responsibility that comes with any social media. And if I'm agreeing that I'm going to let my child have access to it, I'm not doing that until I'm not sending them down the expert slope until they've had a lot of ski lessons. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, I think you. Oh, I'm sorry, Pete.
Where's that voice? Every app, I want access to every app. I want to know what every app is doing on the phone.
And just be specifically praying, but also like be specifically knowledgeable. Like if you know your daughter has Snapchat, you also have the tool most likely of look up what is Snapchat, what are the dangers of Snapchat, how can I help my child filter Snapchat? So many resources. And if you know like your son and his friends are into Fortnite, whether he plays or not, like the kids I know, their parents might not let them have a phone, see a screen. If they go to school with, have friends with that know all about Fortnite, they know all about Fortnite. They know all about it. So make yourself knowledgeable about what your kids are interested in, what their friends are interested in. And is that a little bit of work? Yes, because it just changes so rapidly. It does. It changes so rapidly. But making yourself knowledgeable about what can happen on Instagram. Can I see everything if I have an account and I'm following my daughter? Can I? You can look that up, and I would say probably the answer is no, and to make that. But yeah, just make yourself knowledgeable. You don't have to believe everything you read, but there's people that really know what they're talking about that study this to help parents, and the tools are there.
You know, there's an app, just to piggyback on that, there's an app, and it maybe even it's gone now. That's how quickly they change. But they said, take a look at your phone. If it has two calculators on them, one of them is just a sleeve that holds photographs that that young people are texting to each other, inappropriate photographs or communications, and they're hid in a sleeve that appears like it's a calculator. You know, there are people who are designing evil, right? And that's the world that we're facing. So to say that you can live in this world and just navigate wherever and stay away from the dangers it's not realistic. So we have to be purposeful. It was a good word, Pastor Steve, purposeful and intentional in the way that we operate. And I think that relates to our children. But, again, I can't say it enough, and we've said it several times, but having a relationship, having children, the last thing in the world they're going to do is live in your conviction for the rest of their life. They have to have at some point a conviction that's developed. But God uses us for a certain amount of years in their lives to be that influence. So I would say that's an important one. Okay, I think we want to wrap it up, but did I see another question here?
I actually just had a comment
Yeah,
about
please.
what you said about that scripture. So I was just thinking about it because we have 4, 6 and under, I come in from work and I always feel like I'm just being mean and strict. And I feel like part of the parent is that you have to kind of be somewhat strict. You're not their friend, you're their parent. Children need boundaries, that's how they learn. So one night, almost every night, the 4-year-old, he was then 3, just was giving us a really hard time going to sleep. And I was like, if you get out of this bed again, you're going to get a spanking. And he just laughed. He didn't care. Got out of bed, and I came in and said, you're going to get a spanking. And he looked at me, and I said, you know what? I'm going to give you grace. And I said, do you know what that means? He was like, no. I said, you're going to get something that you don't really deserve, but you should be getting the spanking. And he looked at me, and he started crying. And I feel like at that young age, they can understand. So I feel like if we have to get discernment from God, and we have to know when to be strict and when to give them the grace and when to be humble. And I just thought that was a really good example.
Yeah, that's awesome. And actually, the topic of our discussion tonight, and by the way, if you have thoughts about this kind of a forum and you want to fire me an email or Pastor Pete an email, we would love to hear about it. I think that we could do a breakout kind of roundtable discussion and be a little more specific, have a little more parent interaction, but we wanted to get the ball rolling on these discussions because I think it's important. I've had middle school parents year after year saying, oh my gosh, my kids are just experiencing these brand new liberties, and what are they doing with them? And keep in mind, it's happening at the same time that they're changing hormonally. Maturity-wise, they're changing, and all of a sudden this brand new world is opening up, and there's an awareness that was never there. And there's a need that if it's not being filled, right, if the need is not being filled with the life of God, and that, by the way, that sounds hyper-spiritual, but there is a lot of fun in the life of God. We just had a great retreat with the seniors. These guys laughed and joked and cooked for each other, and did an obstacle course and, all these things. Wasn't so long ago, Sam. And did all these things. And you know what? It was a very deep, rich spiritual time. It really was. But practically speaking, they had a lot of fun. So the lie is that without these things, we can't have true satisfaction, or that we're lacking, or that we're missing. And I would just say, no, that's not true. Like, there is, in the life of the body and in the life that we have here, there is so much more that's lasting and sustainable. So I think we'll probably wrap it up for tonight, unless somebody has a real pressing question. Going once, going twice. All right. Thank you guys for being here. And again, if you have thoughts or questions, you can fire them off to us in an email form that would help us in our future attempts at doing this. All right. Thank you, Lord, for this night, for these thoughts, and for these people, and help us all to arrive home safely. In your precious name, amen.
One spanking is worth 1,000 arguments.
What's that?
One spanking is worth 1,000 arguments.
I was going to say give them 2 spankings, because then they'll have one in reserve. And then, oh, absolutely. And then